Good evening, everybody. If you would like to have your seat, we'll get the program started here. How are you enjoying your evening so far? How is it to be in the Confluence Hotel for the first time? Hope you're enjoying it. We're certainly pleased and proud to have you here in this event in particular. It means a lot to the city as it does to us and touches so many people. It is with my distinct pleasure that I introduce Representative Tony Jurgens to the podium to speak with you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I want to welcome you to the 3rd Annual International Overdose Awareness Day. It's great to be here. It's great to see such a phenomenal crowd. Very proud to be in this event space. I think, I didn't hear what was just said. Is this the first event in here? Well, it's an honor to be part of it. First of all, I want to introduce some of our elected officials that are here. Congresswoman Angie Craig is up front. Angie has been to all 3 events. Thank you, Congresswoman, for being here. State Representative Shane Hudella is there. Am I missing any others or city council members or anybody else here? I don't want to miss anyone. Okay. First up, what I would like to do, we have a lot of speakers tonight, and we're going to try to keep things rolling. First, I want to introduce and invite Pastor Jim Bazoski from Cornerstone Bible Church. Pastor Jim, here he is.
Welcome, everybody. Can you hear me? Good. We are here to encourage one another. We do need encouragement. I'd like to read a scripture before I pray. Out of Psalms 34, it says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He rescues those spirits who are crushed." That really says what we need to hear tonight, because we are brokenhearted. We can't help but have tears in our eyes when we see these wonderful people that were behind us and who left such a legacy in our lives. And we don't want to lose one more. We don't want to lose one more. And we're here today, and we're going to ask God's help. So let's pray. Would you stand with me, if you're able to do that? Heavenly Father, we come to you today. Truly, we are the brokenhearted, and sometimes we felt so crushed. We thank you that you're here to rescue us. Lord, we need your help, your wisdom, your guidance. Lord, we don't want to see one more overdose. We want to rescue our kids. We want to rescue those who are so strung out that they need intervention. I pray, Lord, for each and every one and all of our families, that all of us will go home, Lord. You'd be with us to help us intervene even in our own homes. Father, we need your help. We ask for that in Jesus Christ's name. And everybody said, amen. God bless. Thank you.
First up tonight, speaking, we have Chief David Wilski from the Hastings Police Department. Chief Wilski is a 26-year veteran of law enforcement. He began his career with the University of Minnesota Police Department before being appointed as the Deputy Chief of Police for the City of Hastings in 2017. Chief Wilski was appointed to Chief of Police for the City of Hastings in 2022. Wilski attended the University of Wisconsin River Falls and received his bachelor's degree in 1994, earning his Bachelor's of Science in Criminal Justice and Physical Education. Upon completion, he earned his law enforcement certificate from Metropolitan State University in 1996. While serving in his role as Deputy Chief of the City of Hastings, he earned his Basic Emergency Management Certificate and also serves as the emergency manager for the City of Hastings. Chief Wilski.
Thank you, Tony. I always tell people I'm 27 years old, and now I can't do that because they know when I graduated from college, so thank you for that. So first of all, I'd like to read a proclamation from the city. Unfortunately, Mayor Mary Fassbender sends her regrets, but she could not be with us today. And this is the first time I'm reading a proclamation, so bear with me, please. Whereas the City of Hastings will recognize International Overdose Awareness Day on August 31st, 2023 to raise awareness of drug overdoses and poisonings, especially involving opioids, and reduce the stigma of drug-related deaths, and thereby bringing awareness to the problem of opioid addiction. And whereas overdoses can occur in people who have a substance use disorder, as well as those who do not, such as someone accidentally overdosing on prescription opioids after a surgery or an injury, an elderly person consuming too much of a prescribed pain reliever, a teenager or young adult experimenting with illegal or street drugs for the first time, or a child ingesting opioid pills or powders from a home medicine cabinet or other storage location. And whereas, as in many communities throughout the country, the national opioid and illicit fentanyl epidemic poses a significant threat to public health and safety in Hastings. Overdoses and poisonings related to synthetic opioids are affecting more family members, neighbors, and friends than ever before. City staff such as police, fire, and EMTs, and community partners like the Devin J. Noreen Foundation, businesses, health organizations, faith communities, recovery community organizations, and concerned community members are working to address this growing crisis. And whereas opioids are a class of highly addictive drugs used to reduce pain and include prescription opioids like oxycodone and hydrocodone, as well as illegal opioids like illicit fentanyl, carfentanil, and heroin. And therefore be it resolved that I, Mayor Mary Fassbender of the City of Hastings, do hereby declare August 31st, 2023 International Overdose Awareness Day in Hastings. So with that said, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the statistics that we're seeing at the Hastings Police Department. And then I'll talk about statistics quickly after that. So Tony, if I go over, you can just drag me off the stage here. But this year to date, the Hastings Police Department has had 24 cases. Naloxone was administered in 11 of those cases by either police or fire. A total of 17 doses of naloxone have been administered. So even though we responded to 11 of those cases to administer naloxone, in some cases we had to give multiple doses. I think we're up to 4 in one case. That has been the record so far this year. And as a community member, we have experienced 4 fatalities related to overdoses in our community this year. And the age ranges this year are 18 to 60, so the median range is 37, which is pretty high this year compared to last year. So if we compare that to 2022, we had 24 cases in 2022 at the Hastings Police Department. We administered naloxone 19 times, and a total of, I have 13 doses, so that doesn't make sense. So obviously my numbers are wrong. We had at least administered naloxone 19 times. The age range last year was 18 to 38 with a median age of 29. So when we look at these statistics, what do they really mean? We're on par with last year. So we're not seeing a significant rise, we're not seeing a significant decrease. We are seeing a drop in naloxone use by police and fire. Now, I think that is a good sign. What that means is community members are administering naloxone more so than ever. So that can be good. And our officers are showing up to scenes and it's already been administered. And in some cases, people are coming to and walking away. That's not always the case. Like I said, sometimes we have to deliver a number of doses. What I'd like to say about stats like this is it takes a community to raise a child. And we rely on the help of the community to get the word out about the dangers of illicit fentanyl and other drugs. It doesn't just rely on the police. It doesn't rely just on fire or our EMTs or our pastors. It relies on all of us, and especially our youth. I can talk to my son till I'm blue in the face about the dangers, but if he hears it from a buddy, it goes so much further, or another adult. So when you have that opportunity to educate, we ask that you assist us in educating. And the reality is, when we talk about stats, one overdose is too many. And that's really what I would love to see this community get to, is that we don't have to respond to these overdoses anymore, that people got the message that they don't even want to try these drugs to begin with. I would like to touch briefly that the Minnesota legislature this year voted into law that all law enforcement officers must carry at least 2 doses of Narcan or naloxone while they're on duty. The Hastings Police Department has been doing this for years, but we absolutely love this legislation because if we can save a life as a law enforcement officer, that should be our goal. And even as administrators, we also carry naloxone when we're out on the street. And then briefly, I always like to touch base on Steve's Law, and that means that a person acting in good faith who seeks medical assistance for another person who is experiencing a drug-related overdose may not be charged for possession of a controlled substance. Now, the law is much longer than that, and I really push for people to review that law. Go to the Minnesota State Statute website and look up 604A.05, and you can read it for yourself so you know everything that law entails. I would also like to thank Bridget and the Devin Norring Foundation for including the Hastings Police Department as we continue to educate and bring overdose awareness to this great community. And isn't this a great facility? We've been waiting a long time, so it's great to be here. I thank all of you for being here, and thank you for the opportunity to present.
Representative Hudella, the bill that the chief was talking about, was that your bill? Am I remembering correctly? Not that different one? It was, okay. Next up, we have Hastings Fire Chief John Townsend. John has been with the Hastings Fire Department since 2000, and he's been the chief since 2020.
Well, thank you for having me here today, and it is certainly a pleasure to see this many people here today for this important event, and I'm very happy to be here. Unfortunately, Chief Wilski went with statistics, and my statistics are similar to his, so I'm going to wing this a little bit. So I guess without going with statistics, the Hastings Fire Department covers not only the city of Hastings, but the surrounding townships. So we work both with Hastings Police Department and Dakota County Sheriff's Office, as well as Washington County Sheriff's Office. So one of the things when they asked me to speak to talk about was, how does this affect us and how do we respond to these things? So really quite simply, what we do when we get any call is dispatch gives us a tone as to what that call is about. We regularly, and more regularly than I wish we would, get called to overdoses. Many of these are fentanyl overdoses or opioid overdoses, whether that be accidental, on purpose, or things like that. And whether it's the sheriff's office or the PD, both the fire and EMS department and them work well together, and we both respond to those calls at the same time. We get those calls immediately at the same time, and what ends up happening is pretty amazing. The police get there many times before us because they're typically out on the road, and when we get there, they've administered Narcan or naloxone and started some basic life support saving measures. When our crews that are paramedics get there, they start managing the airway, figuring out if that dose was correct. And many times there are other underlying issues that go along with this, along with the family. So one of the things that I think is important for us to all understand is when we do respond to these types of patients in these situations, it does take a toll on the families that called 911. And if you've ever called 911, that's a pretty difficult situation. So I think as part is focusing on the overdose and what we're here today for, it's also part of the message that I think is important, is that we prepare for how do we deal with that when that happens? Have communications with your family members. What is it like to call 911? What are they going to ask you? How are you going to deal with that stress? You know, that's something that you just walked into. So from our point of view, everything that you do from that moment, whether it's putting them in a position or opening their airway so they can breathe a little bit better, because what the overdose is doing is reducing their drive to breathe. So what you can do to keep them moving while we get there with those important medicines, and also the ability to manage their airway, is simply just trying to care for them and give dispatch calmly as much information as you can and making sure we have good access. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind as we do this. Along with that, our PD and our paramedics work amazing together while they get through these things. And I honestly can't thank them enough for the work that they do in our community every day. And I thank the community for the support that they give our staff, the PD and the paramedics and our firefighters. So with that, since Dave stole my statistics, because we all love to do that. That's the easy part of the speech, right? I will say, unfortunately, our numbers are slightly different than PD's because of our service area. And from 22 to this year, we're not at the complete year, but we are over what we were the previous year. So these numbers are not going down. So again, thank you for having me come. I really appreciate it. I appreciate being part of this event, and I am truly amazed to see the group of people here, and I'm excited to hear from the other speakers who are very good at this program. So thank you very much.
You know, both Chief Wilski and Chief Townsend talked about the use of naloxone. I had the opportunity about a year ago to do a ride-along with the Minneapolis police. And I knew it was just a matter of time we would come across an overdose that night, and we did. So I got to witness firsthand what it was like to arrive at that call and see that individual on the floor. There was a puddle of liquid that, honestly, it was such a big puddle, I thought it was urine, but it was drool. He'd been drooling. He had the snore that all of our police and EMS and fire that have responded to these calls would recognize, where he was suffocating, and it sounded like a loud snoring. He was very near death. If that person that came out into the hallway, who didn't know this guy, he just came out into the hallway and saw him laying there and called 911. If he hadn't done that, that individual would have died without any question. One shot of Narcan, and it wasn't even a minute, 30 seconds, and he perked up. And at that point, the ambulance was there, and the EMTs said, "We're going to take you to the hospital," and he said, "No, I'm fine." He went from near death to thinking he was fine and not even wanting to go to the hospital in less than a minute. And I asked one of the EMTs, I said, "How often are you administering this to the same people?" And he said, "Often." I said, how many times do you do that?" And he said, "As many as it takes." So I want to thank all of our EMTs and police and fire who are the ones making those calls and bringing those people back as many times as it takes. Next, I'd like to bring up Captain Brian Hermerding from the Dakota County Drug Task Force. Captain Hermerding has been with the Dakota County Sheriff's Office since 2007 and has worked in many different roles. Captain Hermerding has worked undercover narcotics for the last 10 years as an agent, a team leader, sergeant, and for the last 2 years as the commander of the Drug Task Force. He was recently reassigned as the Dakota County Sheriff's Office Patrol Captain, and he told me I get at least one get-out-of-jail-free card now that he's on patrol. Everybody. Yeah, just try using that. Captain Hermerding.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again. Thanks for putting this on, Bridget and everybody. You know, law enforcement, we can't do this without you, unfortunately. We need everybody in this room to come together and to kind of help fight this crisis. And this is something we've been dealing with on a large level. So just to kind of give you an idea, seizure-wise, and numbers change, but you know, in 2022, our Dakota County Drug Task Force seized around 112,000 illegal fentanyl pills, and that was more in 2022 than we've ever seized before in our history. In 2023, this year, and what do we have, 4 months, I think, left to the end of the year, we've seized over 350,000. So by my estimates, by the time we're done, it could be close to 500,000 pills that we'll have seized. And that's just fentanyl pills. That's not including the powdered fentanyl, where we've already surpassed what we seized ever in our history in just 2023. So that's why this is so important, right? Raising awareness, getting the word out. And I've said this a lot, but it's important to talk with your kids. It's important to talk with others, and it starts here. It starts in this room. Please, please, please talk with your children about what they're seeing on social media. Bridget will talk about that later, but that's a huge way in which these pills are being sold on Snapchat and all the encrypted Signal and all those encrypted apps that are tough for law enforcement to deal with. So it starts with a conversation, and that's kind of my main point here tonight, is to talk with your family members and your kids. And, you know, I've told Bridget this a lot, but, you know, I look at all the faces behind me and I can't help but think, you know, that what a sad situation we're in, but at least we can go forward, and we're doing something positive in these folks' memory. And so, you know, law enforcement will always stand on the side of the families and the side of victims. And I speak for every law enforcement officer in this room right now, and when I say, you know, we will never stop working to bring the families justice that you guys deserve. And that's our number one priority, and that's not going to stop. So that's all I have. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Brian. One thing I also wanted to mention, this event is being recorded by Hastings Community Television. It'll be available to view online tomorrow. Facebook, what else, Mike? YouTube, anywhere that you can view Hastings Community Television, you'll be able to watch this event. So thank you for being here, Mike. Next up, we have Justin Thomas from Allina Health. Justin Thomas is the addiction counselor at Allina Health. He's passionate about prevention from intoxicant use. Out of concern for the increasing potency of addictive traps in contemporary human life, freedom from the side effects of intoxicants will allow growing minds to reach their full potential. In an attempt to spark a positive change in the Hastings community, he started the Set Yourself Free podcast this year in order to help make it trendy to experience freedom from the pressure to do drugs in our communities. The philosophy is founded on the belief that the only sure way to 100% prevention from fentanyl overdose is to embrace the benefits of living a life without substance abuse. The podcast tells the daunting stories of those who have been lucky to survive their formidable experiments, and regret the damage it has done to their bodies and minds. Justin helps to differentiate between mental health and substance use causal factors in patients who admit to the inpatient mental health units across the Allina Health system, and assess and refer to chemical dependency treatment programs. His newest project is implementing a research proposal on the long-term effects of caffeine on the quality of mental health and vitality. Please help me welcome Justin Thomas.
Thank you. This is a wonderful example of a community getting together to do the best it can to be stronger, to make this community stronger. And honestly, the efforts of Bridget and the Devin J. Noring Foundation have moved me to contribute to make the community stronger, this community. And we're here to try to prevent the next tragedy, which is a really strong thing to do, and this is a great turnout. So I'm an addictions counselor at the hospital, and so I stand right on the line between the patient's freedom and their everything that their body and symptoms are telling doctors and nurses and different healthcare professionals to do something about an addiction problem that's slowly killing them. In some cases, it's going to quickly kill them. And in some cases, the damage is already done. So we can't quite save their life, but we can try to make the end of life less painful. So It's really hard for me because some people get stuck in the hospital because they just don't want to stop destroying their bodies with drugs, and so freedom is really important. And addiction counselors, we actually advocate for people to be free, to go and make their own choices. So how do we prevent this? How do we prevent people from getting so hypnotized by this desire, this reach to go out and fulfill this craving, which is caused by a really high tolerance, and this sort of mindless daily reach to fill this void, this craving that is created by intoxicants that affect the pleasure system of the brain. Prevention, one major line of defense is education. So I believe it's great that we can educate here about everything that we're doing here is education and prevention. But I think there's also a cultural thing going on. I think there's the beast is sort of inside the house, and we need to do something and become more wiser as a civilization. And I think we can move more strategically in opposition against this subtle shift in the culture where it's kind of unspoken, but there's something pulling young people towards using substances. There's something about the way that drugs get spread around among young people that it's a cultural trend. It's kind of trendy, and we need to do something about that. We need to ask questions about what it is that is it because we're not free to do it, or it's unsafe, or is it because it's risky? I want to talk about that, and I want to really explore what it is that we're doing when we're doing drugs. I know many people in recovery, and myself, we think about how our consciousness is sort of made less whole and brought into a narrower experience when you're on drugs, when you're high. You're not really getting the full breadth of the joy that you could have in a given day from actually doing something with your life. I want to talk about why it is that narrowed consciousness, that maybe it's a medicinal treatment of some sort of social anxiety. I really want to explore this with a curious and open mind to try to create a cultural shift among young people and actually just kind of explain exactly what it is to go through a journey of getting hooked on something and getting into that tolerance trap of opioid use, and how it feels hopeless and isolating and disconnecting from actually doing something with your life. And also having more compassion for the people that get stuck in these traps that just fill kind of a conduit for transmitting these drugs and the transactions and things that go on. Having compassion for the kind of homes that they grow up in. They probably just don't know any better, or weren't given great models as parents. There's a lot of pain there. And so exploring this with compassion for these people that are addicted or do fall into this culture of experimenting. Sorry, this should be a shorter speech, but there are places to detox as well. There are places that you can get off of opioids without going through that hell of opioid withdrawal that we've probably all seen in movies, and that really good new show Painkiller on Netflix. You can go to places like Centric Care, Recovery Plus. I've heard great things about that in St. Cloud. The Hennepin County Addiction Medicine. Alina Health also has a really good addiction medicine that does buprenorphine and detox. So as soon as your opioid withdrawals start to get uncomfortable, they will give you the buprenorphine and they will take that discomfort away, and you can really just get off of this stuff and start a new life. It takes a long time to learn this new behavior. It's behavioral treatment, so you have to live life in the new behavior for many months until you reach a new cruising altitude where you suddenly realize you don't need to reach for that anymore. And I want to talk about what are opioid receptors. This is the kind of thing that you learn in addiction treatment. You learn what's going on in your brain, and so you won't see it the same way again if you go back to using the drugs. You'll kind of have a mindfulness instead of mindlessly, for example, eating something. You'll be mindful about how that's affecting your health and how that's affecting the foundation of the rest of your life, because it's so much more fulfilling to experience the small, simple pleasures of life. I mean, the little things, those all go away in addiction. You get those back once your brain heals over time. And really nothing feels better than being free. And it might take a few months to realize this, but one day you might be driving to work and realize, wow, I don't need anything. I'm free. I don't need to go seek a substance somewhere illegally or wherever it is, even to the liquor store. Like, it's amazing to feel that freedom, to know that you're not going to start to slowly drift into this pain of withdrawal if you don't get that drug. So, I just want to give people hope. If you are stuck in a tolerance trap, you will be at ease and you will be free. Hastings has a new adolescent mental health day treatment program at Regina Hospital, and we also have a chemical dependency intensive outpatient program for 4 days a week with for 18 and up. So ages 18 and up can get in there. And I just want to keep this conversation going and continue to educate people, especially young people, so that we can shift the culture towards something more ambitious. I think that we can be healthier and stronger, and I certainly regret everything I did to my body that makes me feel like an old man at 35. And I think I could have felt a lot better had I not even experimented with any of these things that get us high. Thank you.
Next up from the Dakota County Juvenile Court, we have Nick Murphy. There's Nick.
Well, good evening. I can't reiterate enough, just seeing the volume of people here in the small community coming together and really talking about a tough issue. I've been with the Juvenile Drug Court program since 2019. Since coming into that role, fentanyl was virtually non-existent with the clients that we were working with. To put things into perspective, from the year of 2020 to 2022, we had 14 overdoses on my caseload. Happy to say that none of them lost their lives. I stopped keeping count from that point moving forward. It really has been a scary situation for the families we work with and for the drug court team itself. Looking around at these faces, it breaks my heart, and it's tough to see. And it hits close to home for me. I separate work from home, and it's quite scary to see just how real it is. Having been in this role, we've had to have a lot of tough conversations with parents. Right now, the biggest barrier that we are seeing are treatment services for the youth that we work with. Oftentimes looking at 6 to 8 weeks before a treatment bed becomes available. What do you do in the meantime? It's continuing to have these conversations, putting a safety plan together, revisiting that relapse prevention plan, really having all those pieces in place so that we can continue moving forward. This is going to continue to be a tough conversation for everyone, especially for the kids that we work with. The addiction, going back to Justin's points, is just extremely powerful. Even these kids that I've worked with that have overdosed numerous times continue to go back to fentanyl, despite having lost loved ones and nearly losing their own lives. Again, I'll echo what everyone said before me. It's continuing to have these conversations, being proactive, so that we can, have that response in the moment and be prepared. If it wasn't for the plans in place, there's a very, very good chance that one of them would have lost their lives. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Next up, we have Natalia Shevtsova. Natalia is a senior at Eden High School Online. She's a young resident of Dakota County where she lives with her mother Olga, brothers Basil and Baden. Natalia is also sister to Anastasia, who is forever 15. Natalia?
Hi. I'm Natalia, and I lost my sister to fentanyl poisoning. Sorry. Thank you. She died on April 19, 2022, last year, and I didn't just lose a sister, I lost a best friend, because she was my only sister and she was the closest person to me. I know that it's taken me over a year to be able to even think about the night that she died, because it's hard to imagine when somebody this close to you dies, and just dealing with the fact that you're never gonna get to grow up together. I know that me and Anastasia, we had plans to grow up together. She wanted to join the Air Force. She was gonna be a pilot, and she wanted to be a mom, and she had this whole plan about working and me taking care of her kids. But yeah, and she was amazing at everything she did. She could draw, she could paint, she could ski, she could figure skate. She had a beautiful voice. She could sing very, very beautifully, and she was really, really talented at 15. And I can't remember the last conversation we had. I can't remember It's very difficult and still hard to come to terms with what happened. I remember the last memory of her is being woken up in the middle of the night, and my mom woke me up because she could not wake my sister up. And I remember walking into the room and seeing my sister on the bed, and I grabbed her. I was trying to find a heartbeat. I was trying to see if she was breathing, and there was nothing. I just felt a heavy body, a cold, heavy body, and I was trying not to scream as my mom was calling the police, and they were telling her to start giving CPR, and she was gone. And the rest of the night was a blur. I just remember seeing the ambulance, and then calling my older brother, and instantly he was like, "How is mom holding up? Give mom the phone." I remember my little brother on the bunk bed in the middle of the living room, because that's where he slept. He was very confused. I was in shock. I had no idea I knew that she was dead. I knew that it was just really hard to accept, and I couldn't cry. I couldn't say anything. I was in shock, but because I had lost the closest person to me. And I rehearsed this speech so many times, and every single time I've started crying, so I'm glad I can say this without breaking down finally. But even with the year that has passed, it doesn't feel like that long. It feels like yesterday, and the first year was extremely, extremely hard, and I barely got through it, because I felt like a part of me was gone, because she was she was my sister, and she was family. And we had been through a lot together, and she was that one person you could always go to at the end of the day and just talk about everything. There was so much we could relate to. And we were polar opposites, but we got along so well. We grew up together. And it's affected everybody around me, my siblings, my mom, and me. And I'm really thankful for everybody who is here, and it feels really good to see how many people care, and want to make a difference. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Natalia, and I think we all here can appreciate the strength it took for you to come up here tonight. So thank you for doing that. Let's hear it again for Natalia. Next up, I believe we have Jada Lucier. I don't have any other information on Jada. Thank you.
Hello. Oh my gosh. Can you guys come up here? You know who you are. Okay. Hello, I'm Jada. These guys are the ones close to me and the ones that I call family. And I'm just here to talk about my experiences with you all. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. In 2018, my brother was actively using. I was so anxious and depressed thinking about if he was alive or not, or if I'd ever see him again. On top of that, I was dealing with my own childhood trauma. There goes my lashes. Anyways, all of that led me to self-harming and drinking alcohol. I really didn't start drinking heavy until 2019 when I went to treatment. I just grew tired of how I felt and having to process and resurface stuff that had happened to me in my childhood that I just wanted to mask it all. In September of 2020, I wanted to stop drinking because I grew tired of how I felt, constantly waking up with hangovers, and I grew weight from drinking every day, and so I wanted to stop. And then my best friend, Talia, attempted suicide. And that right there was really triggering. And so I went over to her house because I knew something wasn't right. And I went in her room and she was passed out, and she had been self-harming. So I tried to wake her up, and I did, but you could just tell she was getting ready to go. I brought her to the hospital where they admitted her for, I believe it was the weekend. But after that, I felt guilty because I pushed her away. I didn't want to go through what I went through with my brother again because she did start using, and it was just too much. So I pushed her away. And we got into a few fights and we would make up, but it wasn't the same. And in November of 2020, I woke up one morning and went on my phone and I had seen that my little sister, Maddie, had passed away of an OD. And when I heard that, my heart just broke. She was so young and so full of life. Anytime you'd see her, she would light up the room. And and just make everyone smile, even behind all that feistiness. and then I began to drink again. I was drinking really heavy wherever I could get it. In the morning or at night, I was stealing from my parents, from my aunts. And I just started spiraling again. And in December of 2020, I relapsed on self-harm. And oh, that feeling that it gave me, the instant relief, was just, yeah. So I began self-harming again, and then I tried to stop, and I was good. Up until January 12th is when my best friend Talia passed away. And that one, that was tough. It sucks because I seen it coming and I didn't do anything. I tried, but I could only do so much. When she had moved in with 2 of my relatives on the reservation, and right then and there, I knew it wasn't a good sign. And I pushed her away even more, and we got into another fight. And then 2 days later, I found out that she had OD'd. Instantly when I heard, I went to my cousin's house, and I wanted to fight the ones that she was staying with, because you know me. Yeah, but I didn't. I tried to just keep my composure, and all I was thinking about was just, it's not real, it's not her. It can't be. And then everyone left because other people started a fight. Wasn't me. But when everyone left, they brought out her body. And I still didn't want to believe it because I didn't see her, but it was her. And since then, after that, I had a lot of self-guilt because I should have done something, but there wasn't much that I could do, and so that's just a war in my head. But yeah, since then, I've been in therapy and I've been doing healing, and I'm 2 years sober from alcohol. And yeah, and this is a big step for me because, as you can see, I'm crying a lot, and I don't like to cry in front of people. And I think I needed to do this so that others know that you're not alone. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, and I'm a mom to a 6-month-old.
Another impressive young woman. Thank you, Jada, for coming up here and speaking. You know, I was introduced at the beginning as State Representative Tony Juergens, and I'm a former state rep. And so some of you that have heard me talk on this subject have heard this before, but I couldn't help but notice the support group that Jada had. And when this issue first came to me a few years ago, what I noticed was everybody seemed to be pointing fingers. The schools needed to do more, the police need to do more, the county attorney needs to do more, the legislature needs to do more, parents, schools, everybody. Over about a year and a half time, I saw that completely shift. Instead of the finger pointing, I saw people coming together and realizing that everybody had a hand in this. It wasn't any one group or area that was going to solve this problem. It was a little bit from everybody. We need the legislature, we need our federal partners, Congresswoman Craig and Senator Klobuchar and others, police. Everybody has a role to play. And I saw that coming together like Jada's support group came together tonight. So I thought that was very impressive. Senator Amy Klobuchar couldn't be here tonight. Patrick Kelleher from her staff is back here. If you have questions that you would like to get, Patrick, could you stand up, please? Thank you, Patrick, for being here for Senator Klobuchar. If you have questions or comments for the senator, please seek Patrick out. We do have a video from Senator Klobuchar that we'll play now.
Hello to everyone attending Hastings' 3rd Overdose Awareness Day. Thank you for inviting me to share a few words. I'd like to begin by recognizing all of the great organizations that made today possible. Thank you for your unwavering support. Mayor Mary Fassbender for your leadership, the Hastings Police Department for all of your department's efforts to keep the community safe. Finally, I want to thank Bridget Noring and the entire Noring family for your dedicated leadership and for turning your family's unbelievable tragedy into advocacy that will save lives. When I think about the cost of the fentanyl crisis, I think of Devin Noring. Devin was struggling with debilitating migraines, as you know, when he bought what he believed was Percocet over Snapchat to deal with the pain. But what he bought wasn't really Percocet. What that dealer sold him was laced with fentanyl, and it killed him. Devin's story has sadly grown too familiar. Fentanyl isn't just a threat to those living with drug addiction. Its potency makes it a threat to anyone who may be in a moment of deep struggle or peer pressure or just thoughtlessness takes a single pill that could be counterfeit. I don't want any more families to know this pain. We know that the opioid and drug use epidemic is affecting communities throughout our state and our country. In 2021, Minnesota had a record number of 978 deaths from opioid overdoses, of which 834 were related to synthetic opioids, including fentanyl, a fourfold increase from 2018. More Minnesotans died from opioid overdoses, mostly due to fentanyl, than from car crashes. That averages out to approximately 3 Minnesotans lost every day. But these are more than just numbers or trends. These are moms, dads, daughters, sons, friends, neighbors, loved ones. These are Devin. That's why I have long been focused on working across the aisle to crack down on fentanyl trafficking and to stop those illicit drugs and fake pills from entering our ports and our borders. I work to modernize our ports to better screen for illegal drugs, provide the U.S. Postal Service the tools they need to detect fentanyl shipments, and help place wounded or injured vets in post-combat roles as cyber analysts supporting law enforcement's drug investigations. We know more must be done at the borders, with law enforcement, with funding law enforcement. That's why I have long led the bipartisan Cops Reauthorization Act to provide federal resources to hire and retain officers, so we have the right people in place to take on the distribution of opioids, including fentanyl, in our communities from Hastings to across our state. I've also been focused on increasing the accessibility of naloxone, a life-saving medication that can reverse opioid overdoses. Last year, I worked with a bipartisan group of my colleagues to push 7 major drug manufacturers of naloxone to make the treatment available over the counter. And guess what? The FDA approved naloxone for over-the-counter sales this past March, which will go a long way to making sure this important antidote can get to those who need it. But we know that isn't the only answer. We need to make sure we are cracking down on the ways the cartels from Mexico to China have harnessed the social media platforms and made it easier for people to buy these drugs without any consequence. We're advancing a bill through the Judiciary Committee, already passed that committee to the floor right now, and I've been outspoken about taking this on. But there's something else. We also need to do more to help people living with substance use disorders in their recovery. That starts with making quality treatment more accessible to meet people where they are. Some of you have heard me talk about my dad, who passed away a little over 2 years ago. He was a sports reporter and a longtime columnist for the Star Tribune. He was always an avid adventurer and climbed mountains all over the world. I saw him literally climb to the highest peaks, but then fall to the deepest of valleys due to his struggle with alcoholism. After his third DWI, he faced jail time or treatment. He had to choose. Because of his faith, because of his family, because of a legal system that actually was very clear about the consequences, he chose treatment and he got through it. In his words, he was pursued by grace. His story is one of the major reasons why I have worked on addiction issues. Drug courts, making sure there's funding for addiction, and I also work to build on the success of the original Comprehensive Addiction Recovery Act. I was one of 4 senators, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats that led that. That was enacted in 2016 to help prevent illicit drug use, treat addiction, support recovery, reduce overdose deaths with a major focus on opioids. Well, we've now introduced updated legislation to continue to invest in successful programs in the prior care law and put in place additional reforms to help combat addiction. I'm going to keep fighting until it's signed into law. This is a difficult, heartbreaking topic for many people, including those gathered today. But I think you know that your work has made a difference. Your work together, federal, state, local leaders, law enforcement, advocates. We must have the tools in place to prevent these deadly drugs from making their way onto our streets, and yes, support those with their addictions. Because fentanyl and fake pills have claimed far too many lives in our state. Thank you for gathering today. Thank you for paving the way toward a future without these horrific overdoses. Keep up the great work. I'm so proud to represent you.
Patrick, please pass along our thanks to Senator Klobuchar for those remarks. You know, when you're an elected official, part of the job is showing up. And again, I want to thank Representative Hudella for being here and Congresswoman Angie Craig. To help keep straight who some of the elected officials are, I've often told people, when you watch the news at night and you see the chamber, if it's green carpet, that's the House of Representatives in St. Paul, the state of Minnesota. If you see the red carpet, that's the Senate chamber in St. Paul at the state capitol. But if you see the blue carpet, that's Congress, and that's Congresswoman Angie Craig. Congresswoman Craig is in her 3rd term representing District 2 in the United States House of Representatives. Angie and I have worked together on many issues. When we had issues that people would bring to my office, and it turned out to be a federal issue, I would contact Congresswoman Craig's office, her staff. We're always on top of things. I always appreciated how receptive they were, you personally and your staff as well. We've been to meetings together. We filled sandbags together. One day I was out on a motorcycle ride and I stopped at King's in Meesville, and who's walking in the door but Congresswoman Angie Craig. So please welcome Congresswoman Craig.
Well, this is my 3rd term in Congress, and it's also the 3rd time that I've been in Hastings on International Overdose Awareness Day. You know, Senator Klobuchar gave you a lot of the things that we're working on. I'll talk about them a little bit. But I want to start by thanking the young people in the room today especially. It takes tremendous courage to be here. I know you're here because you have been touched by addiction, by an overdose, possibly by a death. And I want to share with you a phone call that I got on my ride over here this evening. It was my 26-year-old son, Josh. He's married, and he called me and he said, "Mom, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm on my way to International Overdose event." I started my morning, in fact, with a group of experts on overdose prevention in our community. Of course, Bridget Noring serves on that advisory council for me, and I thank you so much for your leadership there. But my son Josh said, "It's so interesting, Mom, because you're doing what I asked you to do." I know, it's shocking when a constituent says, "You're doing what I asked you to do." But he didn't ask me to do this just today as a constituent. He asked me to do this when he was about 12 years old. Because my son Josh, who came to be with me when he was 4 months old from his birth mother, placed him in my family, in our family. His birth mom died of an overdose when he was 7. My son Josh asked me to fight for people like his birth mom, to fight to make sure that fewer folks in this country. And so all the stories that you've shared with me personally, you know, Bridget, I look, and of course we've all said that, you know, Devin is in this room tonight through the work that you and your family are doing here. Through this community, he's in this room tonight. Everyone behind me, and as I look at all of the folks behind me, I'm particularly touched when I look at the young people. I have 4 sons myself. We've been touched. I'm a congresswoman, yeah, but tonight, and every time I've been here, I've mostly just been a citizen and a partner in community with each of you. But I can tell you that what you're telling me to do in Congress is having an effect on what I'm doing in Congress. I get a lot of people who come lobby me in Washington. What you do here tonight, and every time I talk to Bridget, is you touch me. And you remind me of that conversation that my son asked me to do everything I could. But I'm going to be really honest with every single one of you. This is a complex challenge that is going to take a whole of community approach to even make a dent in. From prevention and education to treatment. You cannot tell me that in our community that we shouldn't have mental health and addiction treatment centers on every corner, just like we have cardiology and orthopedic centers on every corner in America. Are you telling me that this is not the crisis that it is? It is the leading cause of death. The leading cause of death in this young category of our nation's youth. So I have to tell you, yeah, I'm your congresswoman for many of you, but I'm also kind of a pissed off congresswoman because I don't think this country is making this the American crisis that it is. Sure, there's education and prevention. Sure, there's treatment if you can get a bed, and that's part of the problem. As you talk about Medicaid reimbursement, you talk about private pay insurance reimbursement. I can tell you that mental illness and addiction, health care, is a disease just like any other disease that we have in our country. Now, what Bridget and her family faced, the fentanyl poisoning crisis in America, and so many of you and your friends and your family members have faced, that is a crisis that we have to take on aggressively. I was one of the few members on my side of the aisle who voted to permanently classify fentanyl as a Schedule I drug in the United States Congress. That is not the only answer to this problem, but I can tell you that's part of the answer to this problem. I've been a strong advocate for more technology and more folks at the border when it comes to those ports of entry where these ingredients are being brought and back to our communities. And I can tell you this, I just wrote a letter to this administration and I said to them, we have to make China and Mexico do better and do more to keep this garbage out of our country. So look, I'm not really here to give you a political speech. What I'm here to tell you is that you have a partner. Today at our meeting, we talked about a lot of these things. I was a huge advocate and a part of getting naloxone over the counter, which of course starts just in days. It's going to make a tremendous difference. My staff and I have been trained on how to administer Narcan. We're going to hold that. I'm in the community all the time. And I'm going to tell every single one of you this. If coming together, if supporting Bridget, if being part of this community where we support law enforcement, where we support prosecutors doing the job of making sure that those distributors of fentanyl are incarcerated, figuring out how we can treat addiction for incarcerated people so that we don't see the recidivism in our community and the increased public safety concern. If we can figure just a little bit of each of these things apart, we are going to save an awful lot of lives. And Bridget, Devin's legacy of saving lives is going to be complete. And my promise to my son Josh will be complete as well. Thank you all.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Our next speaker is another video State Senator Judy Seeberger, who couldn't be here tonight. She also provided a video for us.
Hi, I'm State Senator Judy Seeberger. I'd like to thank Bridget Noring for her tireless efforts to continue to discuss the dangers of fentanyl poisoning, her advocacy with regard to community awareness and families who have been impacted by fentanyl poisoning, and her tireless efforts to continue this discussion, which is so important in our communities. I'd also like to thank all of you for joining us today as we discuss the crucial strides we have taken in the battle against this devastating drug. We recognize that victims of fentanyl poisoning often unknowingly consume this deadly drug, and it leads to tragic outcomes. It is with great determination that I introduced measures this last legislative session that have been implemented to address this crisis and protect our friends, families, and neighbors. In this past legislative session, I championed a bill aimed at increasing penalties for distributors of fentanyl. Understanding the gravity of the situation, we have lowered the weight threshold for possession of fentanyl and aligned its penalties with those of heroin. This important step sends a clear message that distributing these dangerous substances will not go unpunished. Moreover, I would like to acknowledge the commendable efforts of Senator Rob Kupek, whose collaboration with me resulted in a significant change to the law. Fentanyl has been reclassified as a Schedule I substance, reflecting the dire need to control its distribution and prevent its further spread. Recognizing that a multifaceted approach is necessary, we have also allocated resources through a harm reduction grant. These funds will be utilized to foster safer practices, minimize the transmission of infectious diseases, and support initiatives such as fentanyl testing, distribution of syringes, disinfectants, and opiate antagonist rescue kits, Narcan. Understanding the importance of public awareness, we have taken steps to address substance use disorders through a comprehensive campaign. The Department of Human Services will spearhead a multi-tiered effort to educate our citizens, reduce stigma, and ensure accessibility to treatment, recovery, and harm reduction services. By doing so, we aim to empower our communities to make informed decisions and seek the help they need. Our commitment extends to our educational institutions as well. Schools will now receive the funding required to have naloxone readily available, which is a critical tool in responding to opioid emergencies. The Commissioner of Health will oversee training and implementation, ensuring our schools are equipped to handle such situations safely and effectively. Furthermore, we recognize the importance of education in combating substance use disorders. Through the expertise of various stakeholders, including the Commissioner of Education, health professionals, and experts, we will develop model programs to educate our youth on the health consequences of substance use, including fentanyl. By imparting knowledge early on, we hope to prevent future tragedies. Lastly, in the pursuit of a comprehensive strategy, the Commissioner of Health will establish a statewide program dedicated to preventing drug overdoses and morbidity. Through epidemiological investigations, surveillance, and evaluation, we will monitor, address, and ultimately prevent drug overdoses throughout our state. These measures represent our collective commitment to safeguarding our communities from the devastating impact of fentanyl. Through legislative action, public awareness campaigns, education, and harm reduction initiatives, we are working tirelessly to create a safer and healthier future for all Minnesotans. Thank you for joining this important event and for continuing to be strong advocates.
Thank you to Senator Seeberger. Next up, we have State Representative Shane Hudella. Shane is in his first term. He's my successor in the Minnesota House of Representatives. He is the president and CEO of United Heroes League, a nonprofit here in Hastings. Shane Hudella.
Thanks so much, Tony. I didn't have a big speech prepared or a script or anything tonight. I'm kind of a late ad. I wasn't completely sure I was going to be here. But this is a topic that's incredibly personal for me. My 21-year-old son at the height of COVID lost his best friend of fentanyl. And I saw Tyler's dad, Nick, here earlier. I don't know if he's still here or not, but there you are, buddy. But you know, Joey and our family thinks about you and Tyler and your family every day. So it's tough. And I think we all need to realize fentanyl doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care if you're rich or you're poor, you're black or you're white. It doesn't care what your background is. The one pill can kill you. And our family's experienced that and many others behind me. And tonight we've heard some incredibly powerful statistics. We've heard some incredibly powerful incredibly powerful testimonials. But we haven't heard a lot of things yet for what we can do personally, and maybe that's coming yet. I know Bridget has a lot of great stuff. But for me personally, I think that there's one thing that everybody in this room and that our community can do, and that's have courage. Have the courage to say something. And it's counterintuitive, right? We're raised, mind your own business. And we think, well, geez, do I say anything? It might cause some embarrassment for me, right? God, I think Tony might be using, but God, what if I'm wrong? Well, I think you need to think about what if you're right and you don't say anything. And I think that as our society has gotten more and more encapsulated in these social media bubbles where we don't talk to each other face to face like we used to, well, we worry more about how many likes we're going to get on a certain post. I think it would be great if our small town community here can get back to just being able to walk up to somebody and say, hey, I feel like I have to tell you something. I know our kids are friends, and I think your son or daughter might be using, or I'm worried about you. You don't seem like you did 2 years ago. Do you need somebody to talk to? I'm here to help. So for me, it's been an honor to be here tonight. It's been an honor to know the Kavitz family and get to know Bridget and be in this realm and be honored to be able to go to the Capitol for a couple years at least and try and make a difference. And we did get some good things done up there, but we've got a long way to go. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Shane. And again, thanks to the Congresswoman Craig and Representative Hudella for being here and for the comments that we got from Senator Klobuchar and Senator Seeberger. And if I could speak on behalf of everybody here, just ask that you continue to work together. As I talked about earlier, it's not any one individual or one group that's responsible for this. It's all of us working together. And as our representatives in Washington and St. Paul, we just ask that you continue to work together and do your part for all of us. So thank you again for being here. Next up is Brenda Ellis Reedy, Jose Reedy's mother. Brenda Reedy, mom of Angel Jose, forever 20. Brenda has worked to be Jose's voice since his death on April 15th, 2021 from fentanyl poisoning. Brenda has been to the rally in Washington, D.C., rallying at the Chinese embassy against illicit fentanyl. She has visited the Capitol many times to get Jose's story out, and she's willing to talk openly about mental health and its relation to substance use and fentanyl poisoning. Please welcome Brenda Ellis Reedy.
Wow, there's a lot of people. I almost chickened out when I came in and saw all these chairs and thought, oh my gosh, they're going to be filled up. So as I was introduced, I'm Brenda Reedy. I'm just your average mom to 2 kids who happens to belong to a special club that several of you out there also belong to. The day, April 15th, will always be in my family more than tax day, because it's the day I lost my 20-year-old son to fentanyl poisoning from a pill sold to him by a supposed friend. You see, it wasn't a real friend, because friends don't do that. They wouldn't sell you death. I have run the gamut of emotions the last 2 years, from sad, mad, anxious, and all the others that are present when someone you love dies suddenly. I was the parent who said, not my kid. But guess what? It was my kid. He had many challenges in 20 years. He was diagnosed with cancer at age 9. He had early childhood trauma because, like Senator Craig, my children are adopted, and they came to me when my son was 4 and my daughter was 8. He has a disability that affected his brain and his logic, reasoning, and thinking. All of those executive functions that we all take for granted. He was homeless at age 18 for a year. He had many mental health issues that were being self-medicated because our county mental health services let my son down and my family. They refused him help, or refused us getting him help, and he dabbled in smoking and marijuana and taking pills that he thought were Percocets, which is what he thought he bought that night. When we got the results of the autopsy, we haven't actually seen it, because right now there's a trial going to be starting on my son's death, because they happen to have the person that allegedly sold him the pill. So we haven't actually seen the autopsy, but I was fortunate enough to be given what it contained, and we were told it was pure fentanyl that killed him. It was enough fentanyl to kill several people, probably over half this room. I had never heard of fentanyl before, other than medical purposes, before I lost my son, but I sure have learned a lot in the last 2 years, more than I ever wanted to know. Fentanyl is a synthetic, powerful opioid that is way more powerful than morphine or heroin. I now know that it takes just a few grams to kill someone. And many of these pills are pressed by individuals who don't care about how much is in a pill. They don't worry about controlling how much is in those pills. They're made in Mexican labs that they don't control how much is in there. So they do that and sell them to whoever, and our kids buy them, or our families buy them. It's easily accessible via Snapchat, which is how my son ended up buying his pill. Our family, alongside many others who have lost someone to fentanyl, have been busy meeting with senators and politicians to get them on board to help slow and eventually stop this epidemic. We've met with our county attorney's office, attended rallies in Washington, D.C. and at our state capitol to bring awareness, and hopefully put an end to this epidemic, killing our loved ones. It takes our voices to honor our loved ones that were killed, and we are fighting this fight so no other family has to go through what we've had to go through. If I could leave our youth that are in the audience with just a few things, remember, it only takes one time. You don't know when you get a pill, if it wasn't prescribed by a doctor, if it was gotten off Snapchat, you don't know what's in that pill. It could look like any other pill you get prescribed. So don't take any pills you bought off Snapchat or social media or any of that stuff, unless it's been prescribed by a doctor. You're playing a game of scary roulette that could end in your death, just like my son did. If you know there are people in your friend group who are struggling, say something. like the person before me just said, if you don't say something, it could have bad consequences. I wished somebody in my son's friend group would have said something. They did, but after he had died. If I could leave the adults with something, the parents, guardians, caregivers, even the youth. Be aware if your child is struggling. If you see him struggling, try to get him help. I know it's hard. We tried. We were met with many roadblocks. Keep open communication. Talk to them. Talk to the kids. We tried to talk to our son, but you know, when you're 18, 19, and 20, you're grown up, what do the parents know? Like the one person said, a parent can say something and it means nothing, but somebody else can say something, they may listen. The one thing I really wished I would have been aware of as a parent are some of the signs of opioid use. Nausea or vomiting, achy muscles and bones, cold flashes, goosebumps, uncontrollable leg movements, diarrhea, insomnia, and severe cravings. Had I known some of these, I would have been more aware, and my son might be here. You know, parents, don't be afraid to search your kid's room. If their room is in your home, you have the right to do that. If we would have done that, we would have found the foil that was burned, that was being used to smoke the fentanyl. If I was more aware, I would have noticed my foil was disappearing from the kitchen. It may just save their lives and avoid having to go through what we've gone through and so many others that I walked this journey on. The pain of losing a loved one, the pain of never seeing his big smile, and the thing I missed the most, his big bear hugs, because he was 6'7" and he gave the best hugs. And I want to end by thanking the law enforcement, the EMS, our politicians who support us in fighting this fight. I know my family has been very supported by this whole process, especially now as we're going into a trial. So, thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. That's something that no parent should ever have to do, and we have too many of you here tonight that have experienced that, and hopefully by you being here tonight, that will prevent others from going through the same. Next up, we have a 2-minute clip. Dominic
See, back when we first
from
started,
Dead on Arrival. That's okay, go.
See, back when we first started, I was telling kids not to use drugs because you might get hooked, you might get addicted. Now there's not even time for that. Now it's don't try a drug because you might actually not wake up tomorrow. You might actually not get another chance. One choice is all it takes. If you don't believe that, I guarantee you, at this point, there was someone very similar to you who wished they could be here right now to look into the camera and look into your eyes and say, don't do it. Please don't do it. Please, I wish I wouldn't have done it. Don't do it. Don't risk your life. So my question for you is, are you going to listen? Or will it be your family and your friends holding your picture, wishing they could have been there to tell you?
This is my son, Alexander. He died at 14 years old from fentanyl poisoning.
This is our daughter, Jessica. She was 29 years old when she was killed by fentanyl.
This is my daughter, Alex. She was murdered at 20 years old by a drug dealer who sold her a counterfeit pill made of fentanyl.
This is my son, Daniel Joseph Puerta Johnson, killed at the age of 16 by illicit fentanyl.
This is my son. This is my son.
Next up, we have the person who, if not for her, this event wouldn't be taking place and we wouldn't be here tonight. Bridget Noring is a bereaved mother who tragically lost her beautiful 19-year-old son, Devin, to fentanyl poisoning. After the loss of her son, Bridget made a conscious decision with her family to transform their pain into powerful force for change. Recognizing the urgent need for education and awareness about the dangers of substance misuse, Bridget and her family have become passionate advocates working tirelessly to prevent others from experiencing the same tragedy. Bridget and her family founded the Devin J. Noring Foundation, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to provide comprehensive information, support, and resources to individuals, families, and communities impacted by fentanyl and other dangerous substances. Bridget is also a board member of Victims of Illicit Drugs, whose founding members created the short documentary Dead on Arrival that we just saw a clip of. Please welcome Bridget Noring.
See, back when we first started, I was
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Without you being here tonight, we couldn't get the messaging out to our community, and that is what is most important to our family. Today is a day for remembering, without stigma or shame, the countless precious lives lost to overdose and fentanyl poisoning. I don't say that my son died from an overdose. By definition, an overdose would mean you know what you are taking and how much you are taking. My son knew neither. My son knows the pain, or my family knows the pain of losing a loved one all too well. This is a true living nightmare that we wake up and relive every single day. It's a nightmare that no parent, no sibling, no family member should ever have to go through. On April 4th, 2020, my husband and I, along with my 2 surviving children, lost Devin. He was 19 years old. We knew in the months leading up to his passing, he had been suffering from blackout migraines, and from his anxiety, he had cracked his molars. He had several vital appointments that week, but with the COVID lockdown, those appointments were canceled and there was no direction on where to go. Devin and the young man he was with, I refuse to call that person a friend because, like Brenda said, these are not friends. They went onto Snapchat and purchased what they believed was a Percocet from a well-known repeat drug dealer in our community. Can you go to the next slide, please? Next one. Go to the next one. I show you these. These are screenshots that children, young adults, sent to us in Devin's case. These are actual from Devin's file of the dealers in our community. I show you this because this is what our teens are seeing on Snapchat. In my opinion, Snapchat is one of the biggest open-air drug markets available to our children. They are leading these drug dealers and the cartels directly to our doorsteps, unbeknownst to us parents. I could relive my son's story over and over. I do it every day. I can remember that day perfectly. The trauma that has left my family, especially my children, with, it's horrible. I know if Devin knew there was a chance he could die, he wouldn't have taken that pill. I know any one of these children up here, they would not have done it. Devin loved his family and his friends, oftentimes his friends more than his family. And I know if he knew the devastation left in his absence, he would not have taken that pill. He had plans that summer to go to California with his friends who are in this room tonight. He wanted to look at schools to pursue his music career. He was so passionate about it. I miss that so much. I miss hearing the bass and hearing him upstairs. Today, I was invited by the ONDCP to go to the White House and sit with other bereaved parents. And it's an honor to get that invitation. You can ask my husband. It took me less than a second to decline that invitation. Because I can go to DC and I can sit with other families and I can preach to the choir, as they say. But I knew that tonight was our event and my community and my promise to my son that I would do something comes first. This morning I also knew that I was being inaugurated into Congresswoman Angie Craig's Substance Use Disorder and Mental Health Advisory Council, and that is a great honor. And it's an honor to be able to have that voice, but not just my voice, the voice of the other parents, but especially the voice of our youth. And I can tell you that I have met so many of these young adults on this journey who have lost their friends, they have lost their siblings, they have lost their loved ones, and they are hurting. They are scared, but they are also wanting to get this messaging out there just as much as we are. They want the facts, they want the truth. I'm not going to say who it was, but there are young adults who feel that this is becoming normal. There are young adults in this room who refuse to put away their funeral clothes because they are just waiting for the next friend to die. That is not normal. We need to get ahead of this. As Representative Hudella mentioned, illicit fentanyl, it knows no boundaries. It doesn't care about your age. It doesn't care about your color. It doesn't care if you're Democrat, Republican. It is killing first-time users at the same rate as it is those with substance use disorders. And we are losing too many of our young children and adults. I can sit here and I can name so many names: Natalia, Tyler, Charlie, Jose, Anastasia, Zalea, Mike, Nicholas, Seth, Jaden, Elena, Alex, and thousands more. I've met so many parents. I am tired of meeting parents after it's too late. This is a multi-generational killer that no one is speaking about, and when I say it's a multi-generational killer, I don't mean by age. My son's life ended at 19. He will never have children. His children will never have children. Their children never have children. And it kills me because my daughter has one of the most beautiful grandbabies. I have the most beautiful grandbaby in the world, and Devin will never know her. But she is so amazing, and it's like she knows him because she will carry his picture around and she will say D. She knows, so I feel he's close. This is a topic we are still not talking about enough. You know, I'm thankful to law enforcement, Dakota County, Drug Task Force, Hastings Police Department. You guys are amazing. You have been so great at uplifting our families and helping us get the message out there. But we hear more about COVID-19 still than we do this. And children under 14 are the fastest growing demographic dying from this. Our DEA agent, Amanda Frazier, couldn't be here tonight. She sends her regrets. But the DEA, they're another great support system that has been uplifting our families. 6 out of 10 of these pills contain a lethal dose of fentanyl. And we've all heard tonight how lethal it is and how deadly it is, but I am a visual person. And when I bring this to our schools, it floors the kids. So 1 cup of fentanyl is enough to kill 100,000 people. Hastings has a population of roughly 24,000 people, so a 1/4 cup of fentanyl could kill every single person in Hastings 4 1/3 cups could kill every single person in Dakota County. That's my visual. So what can we do? I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I wish I did. I know it starts with education and awareness. I know our law enforcement have been trying to get into our schools for a long time. I wish someone had said something somewhere, an alert, a Facebook post, something, because we had these conversations with our children. We have family members on both sides that struggle with substance use disorders, and there is no shame in that. But this is one that we did not have. To know that I had my hand on my son's bedroom door that night, and I walked away because I trusted the person who said he was sleeping, kills me, because I wasn't educated enough to save my son. So now it is literally a race against time for parents like us, Brenda, and all the other families in this room who are supporting and getting the message out there to save at least one life. I am selfish. I want to save more than just one. I want to save them all. Like Brenda said, learn the signs of an overdose. September 16th, my fellow organizers, Sherry Lohman and Teresa Chattel, thank you guys so much. We're hosting a naloxone training at Our Savior's Lutheran Church from 2 to 4. I encourage our young adults and adults to show up, learn the signs of an overdose, learn how to use naloxone. Again, if you see something, say something. Hastings PD, we have the anonymous tip line. I've come to know so many of these young adults in town who send me the information from Snapchat, and I forward it to law enforcement. As an adult, as a parent, that is my job. As a community member, that is my job, to look after my community. And I beg of you, if you are with somebody who is overdosing, even if you're not sure, call 911, because seconds they literally count. Do not leave that person. Do not dump them in front of the hospital. Do not dump them on the side of the road, their front lawn. Just get them help. If you are someone struggling with substance use disorder, I beg of you to seek help before it's too late. You are worth every single moment of your recovery, and I know you can recover. The young adults in my community, I know you're hurting. I know you're tired of burying your friends. But I believe you're going to be the ones to lead us out of this crisis. You have the greatest influence over one another, and I'm going to be calling upon you to help us hopefully put an end to this crisis. As a community, we need to stop the stigma. I am so tired of hearing, well, Devin was an adult. He made a choice, and therefore he's responsible for the consequences of that choice. I am tired of hearing these beautiful kids be called junkies, worthless addicts. That's Darwin at work. These are people's children. They're their loved ones. They are somebody's entire world, somebody's entire existence. I hear parents say, not my kid. I just went to New York with Andrea Thomas and fellow advocates. We blanketed that Times Square, not only with our faces of our children, but with Narcan. And I can't tell you how many parents jump back, whoa, not my kid. Who is that kid? Who is that kid? We have babies on our banner, 1 year old. Babies. Who's that kid? I want to say thank you to all of our guests tonight, especially our youth. Thank you to all of our guest speakers for having the courage to come up here and share your stories. Big thank you to our resource colleagues for making the trip down here. Our goal is always to make sure that we know who we can point those who are in need to where they can get help. Thank you to the Confluence Hotel for opening up their doors for us tonight. Thank you to Factory Motor Parts for donating the tickets for the Twins raffle. Very special thank you to Tyler Kavitz's family for helping us create the Vikings gift basket that we're going to raffle off. And lastly, one very, very special thank you to Dale Riley. I met Dale Riley 3 years ago, and he asked me what I wanted. What's your birthday list, Bridget? Be careful with that question, Dale Riley. But I told him, and we only had weeks to plan, I want to have IOAD. I want to bring my community together. I want to educate them. I want to get this messaging into as many parents and families as possible. And I called upon Dale Riley year 2, and I called upon him again this year. So thank you very much, and thank you everybody for being here and making tonight an amazing, successful night. Where's the basket?
Hello all. Some of you may know me, some of you may not. My name is Haley. I am Bridget's daughter. She pulled me up here last minute like usual, but that's okay.
Oh, I didn't want you to speak. I just want you to support me.
Well, that's fine. She does this quite often. Like when we went to the high school, we spoke with the kids, and I was actually up all night wondering how I can reach these kids, and I came up with this harebrained idea to bring cookies in, and I sold them cookies unbeknownst to them that I had marked special plates and quote unquote killed some of them. So, and I am happy to still do it today. To be up here and speak.
No, not kill the people.
Not kill people, no. We're not here for that. We're here to speak. And it only felt right because the last time I was behind a podium like this was to deliver my brother's eulogy 3 years ago. So it only felt right to come up here and thank you all so much that you are here supporting not only our family, but the other families that are very deeply affected by this. I had a dream about my brother about a week ago, and it was a full conversation, and I was quite upset because I couldn't remember 90% of it, but the one thing I do remember the most was he looked at me and he said, "This is an adjustment." And I think we can all agree that somehow, some way, we were all touched by this, and it is a horrible adjustment. So, if there is one thing I think everyone can take away is that we are all in this adjustment together. So again, I deeply, deeply thank you all from the bottom of my heart for being here tonight.
All right, once again, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. That does conclude the program. If you didn't get a chance to talk to the folks at the informational tables, hopefully they'll stick around for a few minutes. Please feel free to do that. Thanks again for coming, and drive carefully.
So what you'll do is you'll download the MLB app.